Alright guys, welcome back to Project GoodSpeed. On today's video, I am going to be installing the amp and subwoofer on my little hatchback here. Let's get started. Now, in a previous video, I actually installed a full KICKER speaker system, or rather just the speakers, on the little hatchback here, and they are quite an improvement. Basically, they just eliminated the distortion on higher volumes, and now I can crank up my double din as high as it goes. However, only time will tell if the distortion was improved on just that song or if it's for every song, because I only tested one song just to get a constant reference point. But I mean, I do notice a difference. So now we're gonna move on to installing the subwoofer and the amp with our amplifier wiring kit. Now, all this stuff is KICKER, like the speakers that I installed. It's all KICKER products just because I know of the brand, that's pretty much it, and it's relatively inexpensive. Now, installing the speakers was a relatively simple job and it really didn't take too much. But now we're gonna get into a little bit more complicated stuff because the amplifier has to be wired with a few things in mind. In my case, I really didn't want a obnoxiously loud subwoofer just because my friend has one and I've been in his car and it's a little uncomfortable for me. So I would rather stick on the low end of the bass. And also, not to mention, when you start to increase the bass, you increase the vibrations on your car. And let's not forget, this is a relatively older model Civic and could have some rattling noises. Not to mention it's owned by a sort of lazy owner, and if stuff rattles, I'd really rather not push it and make things worse just because it would bother the crap out of me and then I'd have to do more work to stop the rattling. So I decided to go with only a 8-inch subwoofer, and KICKER's, I think this is a lower powered version of KICKER's models. They have pretty high ones, but this is only at 400 watts RMS. Since I'm really not an expert in this kind of stuff, I'll basically just say that the 400 watt RMS is basically the value you get from the amplifier outputting that kind of power on a average basis, whereas the 800 is basically the max it can do at any one time. You typically want to get an amplifier that can output a little bit more, or if not the same as the subwoofer you're pairing it with. And as we can see here, this one's rated for 300 watts. So the amplifier is a little stronger than the sub, which is okay because you don't want to have it the other way where the amplifier is underpowered and the sub is overpowered, which would mean the amplifier is putting out max power and yet the sub is asking for more, and that's how you get a blown up amplifier. One thing that isn't included in the kit is this remote bass control knob, which is basically just that. It controls the amount of bass so that you can change it whenever you want to listen to something different that requires less bass or some that requires more. I was doing some research, and based on the power rating of this amplifier, I technically should be using 8-gauge wire, but because I'm not too sure about this current setup here, as in I'm not sure if this would be loud enough or if this would be strong enough, I went ahead and purchased the 4-gauge just in case I would want to go up in both power and size of the subwoofer. And I didn't need to worry about rewiring anything else. I would just have to replace this part and the sub, and everything would just be already wired to the same location. I would just have to install the new stuff. Now, with that stuff being said, I'm gonna go ahead and just unbox all this stuff and we can see what it looks like. I just wanted to go ahead and talk about my little subwoofer here because it is quite small. It's about the size of my palm. It says it's an 8-inch sub. It comes with a passive radiator here, which is I guess KICKER's new technology for cooling this thing, because only this one is the speaker, and this basically just pushes air in and out, I suppose. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I did get it because of the thin-ish design and because KICKER says that it is quite sturdy, and picking it up, I mean, just looking at it, I can see that it is quite sturdy and it can handle some weight. And I'm about to put that to the test. Look at this. It's in the middle too. And I'm 200 pounds. So when I throw this in the back of the little hatchback, I won't have any issues putting stuff on top of it. Now, I mentioned that I didn't really want a loud, obnoxious sub, but I also didn't want one that was not even noticeable. So I did a lot of research and ended up choosing this specific type. I decided to go with this one specifically because I was looking for one that didn't take up too much space, because for anyone who owns a hatchback, it is one of the best parts about it is if I just lay everything flat, I have so much space. And not to mention, I have that hatchback area in case, you know, I don't want to fold everything flat. I still have a pretty decent cargo space, but adding a closed ported enclosure would basically just eliminate that. Or if I got a larger size, I would end up with a larger box, which meant I have less cargo space. I can fit so much stuff back there, and I just didn't want a large subwoofer to get in the way, which is why I haven't bought one for a long time. And I saw this size and I thought, this doesn't look too bad. I think I could probably get away with this. And I heard some of the YouTube videos on how these things sound, and I was kind of impressed, although I couldn't find one with the 8-inch sub one in particular, but I'm gonna see whether or not this is a good buy. Now, the KICKER amplifier that I chose is the CXA 400.1 mono amplifier. It is rated for 400 watts at 1 ohm, and 300 watts at 2 ohms, and 150 at 4 ohms. Compared to installing the amplifier, the sub is actually one of the easiest things to install, because you just find a spot for it and insert the speaker wires right through here, and that's it. But that's basically gonna be the end of the install, and this is gonna take up 95% of the install process. So, and with a little bit of editing, I should be able to have this done pretty quick.
Several days later.
Check it out. Fully installed, sub and everything. Everything is just as it should be. Now, let me go ahead and show you guys and just talk about what I did. It is installed. I decided to mount it up against the pillar here. I think this is the B pillar for the seatbelt here. And you guys, there's plenty of clearance here. I use small screws so I wouldn't interfere with the seatbelt, but it's pretty sturdy. I mounted my ground to there's a screw under here, underneath the seats here, and I just zip tied everything to get it a little more organized. I left the amplifier facing up just so I can try to access the dials in there just in case. So there you guys have it. I have installed the entire KICKER sound system in the little hatchback. A KICKER sound system all the way around, from speakers to the 8-inch sub in the back. That's a downward facing enclosed box paired with a mono amplifier. That's, you know, I placed it in the quarter panel just because that is the only spot I felt, you know, it was enough space in there, and I just didn't want to put it in the back just in case. These hatchbacks are known to, you know, let a little bit of water in there because they're old and the moldings tend to give out pretty quickly. So let me go ahead and show you guys what it sounds like. I have some footage of what it sounded like before with just the speakers, but it's not even close. The sound from the sub is just perfect. Man, these little KICKERs are freaking dope, man. I'm telling you that they really cut off any of the noise at higher volumes, and since I have a sub installed, they don't really have to play the low tones, and basically just really comes together all in this tiny little hatchback. Now, I was a little concerned with the 8-inch sub that it might not be loud enough, but this is plenty loud for this little car. Honestly, anything louder is just a little excessive, because I mean, I can crank this up all the way and I can feel the vibrations in there just moving everything. Like, it's just unnecessary for me, because I don't like to make my car rattle, and not too lazy to fix any of the rattles that are too extreme or too difficult. So I'd rather have a small one that sounds decent enough. Now, let's go ahead and talk about some of the stuff that I encountered. So the amplifier for me, everything paired perfectly fine. I just wished I had checked because I didn't know I needed fork adapters this thing, as well as something to crimp them onto the wire. This essentially held me back a couple days. I had to order this on Amazon once I found out that they weren't just plug in and screw on tight. What am I supposed to do with this? It's been a couple days of me waiting just for this part to come in. Really do wish that they would have advertised that it doesn't fit on there, because on the Kicker fuse here, look, the cable fits in there fine. And for the speaker wires, they even provide the fork terminals for it, but they just don't give you the ones for the amplifier. I guess they just don't, they'd rather not assume what amplifier you're using, so they just don't provide them in the first place, I guess. Really wish I would have known that though. Oh well. So that was a bummer, but I mean, overall, pretty simple process. You know, after I wired up the 4-gauge wire from the battery and just put every wire in place before attaching it to either end, after that, it was just pretty much plug and play with the crimp tool kit and the other crimp tools for the remote wires and the speaker wires. Oh, right, one more thing. So after I plugged in everything and everything checked out, I went ahead and I installed the bass boost knob underneath the steering wheel. I mounted it kind of hidden under there, and I basically used that to sort of calibrate or set up the amplifier. Ideally, from what I've been doing research on, you really need to know your stuff when it comes to this kind of things, but I'm not gonna pay a lot of money for somebody to tune it, so this is what I did. And I wanna preface this by saying I have no idea how to do this in the first place. I've never done it before. I don't even know if this is right. I hope nothing blows up or nothing breaks on me. Essentially what I did is I turned the bass boost knob all the way up to the max setting, and then I went ahead and went to the amplifier and just adjusted the gain so that I can find basically the setting where I start to cut off and get noise in my sub. And once I found that, I essentially just dialed it back a little so that I found where the peak volume would be for this particular sub. I thought that would be enough, but then I changed the song and the sub went back down because I guess the song I was tuning it for was a little low on bass, and when I tried to find another song, the volumes were a little too low. So I tuned it to that one, and then another song came out, and it's a real big ordeal. Essentially just kept going higher and higher, and this little sub was surprisingly enough kept taking the volume. I found myself adjusting the gain a little bit more each time, and the sub didn't really cut out at the point that I thought it would. Another thing that I use for reference is just the noise of the vibrations from the car. I did have to dial it back quite a bit, even before the limit of the sub, just because I don't like all those vibrations. And I thought, this is gonna get annoying, so I just dialed it back a little bit further, like farther back than just before the speakers cut out, because all those vibrations would get annoying over time. Now, I've read some of the instructions on the manual, and it does say that it is ideal if you run the power wire separate from any of the speaker wires or the RCA cables, which is what I did here. Everything to the speakers and to the amplifier from the dash is rigged on this side, all around the driver's side, and only the power wire is actually rigged onto the passenger side. Well, there you guys have it. I do want to mention I actually did hook this sub up to my buddy's system, and he had a stronger amplifier, and it sounded, obviously a lot better. But like I said, I don't want an obnoxious bass. I just want to be able to hear it a little better than what comes out of the previous speakers. But there you guys have it. That is the KICKER's CX amplifier with the TRTP8 sub. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, it's a downward facing 8-inch sub with an enclosure and a passive radiator that is supposed to cool it better. I don't really know how that's supposed to help with a louder sound, but I mean, I definitely have that now. Anyway, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you guys liked it. I definitely am digging my little hatchback sound system now. It's definitely gonna make driving on the highway a lot better. I don't have to worry about hearing my underpowered little engine struggling. I can just crank up the tunes and hear that bass and I'm set. So till next time guys, take care and good speed.